Welcome to the Bourbon Friday show, where at the end of a long week, we always take a break, drink a little bit of bourbon, try a new one, and we talk to some of our favorite people from the St. Louis startup community. So I'm very excited today because the topic of conversation is going to be all about T-Rex, which is in a lot of ways my second home. I think I spend as much time here as I do my actual house. So I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Patty Hagen, who is the president and executive director of T-Rex. Welcome to the show, Patty.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks.
Well, first of all, thanks for taking some time to join us. I know you've been very busy lately, so we had to carve some time out for this. So tell us, for the people that are watching today, a lot of them probably know about T-Rex, but things have changed substantially in just a few years. So tell us, kind of give us your 30-second description of what T-Rex is.
Yeah, well, T-Rex is, first of all, is wonderful.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah. T-Rex is an innovation center located in downtown St. Louis in a historic building on Washington Avenue. We have over 400 companies now, over 400 members and over 220 companies now located within the facility. We're a community of entrepreneurs and innovators.
Sure.
And we serve the broader St. Louis community with innovation conference space and with programming and events that serve our mission, which is to further economic development around innovation and entrepreneurship for the St. Louis region.
Okay, very cool. So there's a lot of stuff there. We'll get into each of those one at a time, I guess. So let's talk about how T-Rex got started first, right? Because I think that in a lot of ways, from my understanding, T-Rex was pretty original, right? Like this is something not a lot of cities, maybe any city, had tried before. So how did T-Rex come to be in the first place?
Right. So T-Rex, there were some similarities to what was happening in other cities. It followed sort of a movement by millennials to urban centers.
Sure.
And also a change in the way that people wanted to work and wanted their work to be structured. And also a real opportunity around technology and economic development around entrepreneurship and technology.
Sure.
And so the starting points of T-Rex sort of lay within that context. But T-Rex itself was actually started by some really forward-looking people from a number of economic development leadership organizations in the St. Louis region, including Downtown STL, the Regional Chamber, the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, and the St. Louis Development Corporation. So those are our four founding sponsors. Later on, the Missouri Technology Corporation, which is a state organization, stepped up to also become one of our founding sponsors. Okay. But we started in the Railway Exchange building, and that's where we got our name. Yeah. And it was very grassroots, Nick, as you refer to. And it was a lot of fun and kind of a, very grassroots, very authentic. I think that, what really happened is the timing was great. Arch Grants was starting at the same time. Capital Innovators was starting at the same time. And all of those organizations became housed in the Railway Exchange together. So that quickly grew to about 70 companies or so. And then the fate of that and our name comes from technology in the Railway Exchange.
At the Railway Exchange, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
So
what does it mean now? Because, we're not in the Railway Exchange anymore. Did the name change or the description of it at all?
Yeah, it comes from our roots.
Sure.
That's a good question. We probably need to find a new source for what it means now. But I think it is great. It is a great hearkening back to our grassroots.
Sure.
And that's what's made this so successful. We've really tried to keep that grassroots community, local feeling, a real community of helping one another and supporting one another in our journeys together as entrepreneurs. And T-Rex really is an entrepreneurial organization.
Sure.
It's a nonprofit, but we've really had to build this as an organization locally. So it's grown, and now again, so then we bought this building. We own the building we're in, and we've been conducting a $10 million campaign.
$10 million, okay.
Yeah. It's a great old building, but it's an old building.
It needs some work,
It needs some work. And we've been lucky to have great support in the community.
Sure.
And so we're nearing the end of the campaign, and we're doing renovation projects throughout the entire facility.
Sure. So I know to get into that a little bit. So first, tell us about the building. So I think the building has a pretty cool story. It was the Lambert Furniture Building for a long time, right?
It was. And even prior to that, it was built as a manufacturing building. If you can imagine, back, it's over 100 years old.
Wow.
So back in those days, this was the heart of commerce in St. Louis, downtown was, and especially Washington Avenue. And when you stand, I find this fascinating. When you stand on Washington Avenue in front of T-Rex and you look down Washington Avenue, all the buildings are about the same height.
Yeah.
So we're 8 stories tall.
Okay.
And so that is as high as you could take a building with a wooden structure.
Sure.
And so we have the original, and they're the original pine structural elements of this building. That's how all those buildings are built on Wash Ave, and that's
Sure.
why they look kind of similar in terms of heights.
Yeah, I mean, because it reminds me a lot of the lofts down here because they're the same kind of building, right?
Yeah.
They have these, almost a foot or bigger, timbers that run all the way up and down through the building, right? So.
Yeah,
That's very cool. Yeah,
it's really beautiful.
It is. Yeah.
And so the opportunity to bring a building back to life again,
Sure.
in this great historic neighborhood in St. Louis is a privilege.
Yeah.
And it really is a driver for us because we all love this building. And thank God this great old building has us too. So, but it was a Lambert building prior to that, manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
But Lambert is its historic name, and so we keep that name as part of our, it's T-Rex in the Lambert building. And the Lambert Company, and this was even after others were in here, but the Lambert Company built furniture and then sold furniture on the first floor of the building.
Okay.
We still have some historic pictures from that time. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it's changed. The last renovation before the things that we're doing to it now was in the 1980s.
Okay.
And
I know our office reminds me about the 80s a little bit.
80s,
yeah.
It's got a little bit of that, legal, feel from back
Sure.
in the 80s. The Stoller Partnership was here.
Okay.
For those who know that far back, but yeah, and so the need to renovate not only the way it looks, what is important, but we also needed to address all the infrastructure. So very non-sexy stuff like HVAC, the cooling tower. So it's expensive, but it's important. So we really have had great partners to do a lot of cool things with it.
Yeah, that's great. So I know there's a lot of construction going on right now.
Right.
Exciting stuff. I know Arch Grants moved in recently, right? Down on the first floor. So what else can we expect to see here in the next year or two? And we'll start there, and then we can talk about all the money that's being raised recently.
Right. So we're starting construction. We just picked a general contractor to almost completely renovate the third floor.
Okay.
And then we're designing another area of the third floor with another architectural firm. We've tried to spread the funding among different architects, especially downtown, to give everybody a sort of a crack at having a part of T-Rex. So
does that mean every floor is going to have like a different feel in a way?
There's a little of that, and a little of a chance of the architectural firms who we're so proud of. We have such a great architectural community in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But we've had Forum, Space Architects, Fox, Trivers, Remager, and Arcturus, all involved, and also Peter Tao. And so all of those firms are having now design work being done in our building. And that's a real privilege as well, have those great minds.
That's amazing, yeah.
So the third floor is the next big demo, and that's going to be completely redone. And then and that will be used for sort of the next stage of startups. So sort of what I like to call them teenage companies. So not the little baby startups. But
we're talking like 10 or more employees, or kind of
maybe 8 to 10 might be a good breaking point. But we have flexibility there too. It all depends, and we try to serve our companies in the best way we can. So So that will be sort of the focus of that floor.
Okay.
And then at the same time, we're designing the fourth floor. And on the fourth floor, we're going to be including a geospatial resource and innovation center.
Ooh, okay.
And so that is going to be a high-tech, state-of-the-art facility that will focus on geospatial innovation,
Okay.
Which will include training. It will include, trying new things, so innovating within the center, and then entrepreneurship in terms of commercialization and helping geospatial startup companies get going.
Gotcha. Well, I know geospatial has become kind of a bigger deal for St. Louis. I mean, obviously the NGA moving in,
Right,
it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Do you see geospatial kind of becoming, I mean, obviously for T-Rex, it's becoming a big deal. Is that going to be a big thing for the entire St. Louis ecosystem, or how do you see that developing?
Yeah, yes, Nick. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
The NGA has been here for many years, and the interesting thing that some of my colleagues and I were talking about recently is that there really has been we have been a center in the nation of geospatial expertise, and yet because of the nature of the work, not many people knew that existed.
Really?
So a lot of the work that the NGA is doing is top secret, classified kind of work.
So stuff they
the
can't talk
nature
about.
Of the business, right? However, because for a number of reasons, and the two major ones being the relocation of the NGA's headquarters about 1.5 miles away from here, which they're working on that right now. That is a major driver for sort of this recognition of the NGA and geospatial intelligence as a real driver of the economy here in the region. There are a lot of corporate entities that work with the NGA. And there are also a growing number of companies that are using location-based intelligence or locational information to make decisions regarding their company strategy, creating efficiencies within the company, and so forth. So it really geospatial and location information and data and analysis really touches everything now that every company is being involved with.
Sure, and that was, I think, over the past couple weeks, that's been something that's come up on the show a lot, is like how, you don't even think about the plays that kind of impacts your life, right? Or, all this mapping that's being done, and talking about population distributions and how people are moving and being able to use that information to map those things. So I think that's, I think there's a lot of stuff that's developing there that we can't even imagine right now.
We can't even imagine. And there are some sort of interesting connections that are fascinating. So, for example, one of the geospatial startups that we're working with most recently is a woman who came from the NGA, and some of her work was tracking poaching in Africa. And wildlife trafficking becomes a conduit to human trafficking, and it also is a conduit to funding for terrorists. And so by tracking and mapping data associated with, you would think, maybe somewhat unrelated information, you can create connections and create strategies that hadn't really been available or realized or available before. In order to make better decisions.
Wow. Yeah. There's so many cool examples like that, right? That's really cool stuff. So obviously, what T-Rex is trying to do here in St. Louis is, a big, powerful mission, right? It seems like there's a lot of support for that mission. I know you're talking about a couple grants that have come through recently. Do you want to talk about kind of how T-Rex is a nonprofit? It's a different model than a lot of typical kind of co-working spaces, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that. How does the fundraising work? How does T-Rex get things paid for?
Right. So how does T-Rex get things paid for is we actually are revenue driven in terms of rents. We do charge rents, but part of our mission is to keep those as low as possible.
And we appreciate that, by the way. Thank you very much. Yes.
No problem. but because we really want startup companies to look at us as a place where you can get your wheels under you.
Okay.
And then our hope is to graduate companies out into the St. Louis region, into these great buildings downtown, or elsewhere throughout the region.
Okay.
As long as there's company creation going on, that we're
that's the mission.
Solving the
sure.
mission. But also inclusive, economic development is also a very important part of our mission. So that rental piece is part of how we fund ourselves, and then where we meet the rest of that gap is through fundraising and grant writing.
Sure.
We support tech companies from across the board, but as a nonprofit, it's important to have certain focus areas so that for people who offer grants, that can be a very compelling argument to them as you seek to raise money. So using geospatial again as an example, that's not all we do, but just recently, yesterday, in fact, we were notified after a lot of hard work, we received a $500,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce to support our geospatial programming.
Wow.
And then prior to that, Monsanto provided $500,000 towards our capital campaign to help support the Geospatial Resource Center.
That's amazing.
The St. Louis Development Corporation allocated $5 million in new market tax credits toward our capital campaign, and this is also part of it. And the state has also funded us most recently with a $200,000 grant from the Missouri Technology Corporation.
Very cool.
Towards these geospatial efforts and all advanced technology efforts that we're making. So
that's amazing. Well, congratulations, first of all.
It's a lot of hard work, but it's good.
Yeah, it sounds like it's working. So the development of this place has been kind of incredible to watch. So that's pretty cool. So you got all these different organizations that are contributing to this. Do they play a role outside of the money? So I know, I obviously look around the building, there's lots of sponsorships, and the different rooms are sponsored by different corporations and whatnot. Are there partnerships beyond that? What kind of involvement do they have in T-Rex outside of just money?
Right. So, that's a great question. And for each organization, it just depends on what they need and what they're, how they want to connect to us. And that's true for all the universities that we're connected to as well.
Okay.
So, for example, SIU Edwardsville, they're one of our partners. And they have a lot of hackathons here, a lot of meetings. We work with them on a number of initiatives around geospatial. So each organization, corporate, university, even within T-Rex, some of our anchor tenants, we're working with them in different ways, in the ways that create a win situation for them and a win for T-Rex as well. So we're very flexible.
It's very open to different types of opportunities. Okay. Well, so one last question I have for you before we switch gears a little bit here is who does T-Rex want in the building, right? So if somebody's out there watching, I think there's a lot of, kind of startup, very, very early stage startups where people maybe want to be entrepreneur types. Who do you want here? Is there a certain kind of company that's a good fit for T-Rex? Is there a certain kind of entrepreneur? What are you looking for?
Right. Well, first of all, to be a member of T-Rex, you have to really make sure that you are a great member of our community.
Sure.
I mean, we all look to one another. That's part of the culture in the community here of supporting one another.
Okay.
But then of the administrative aspect of this, we have a co-working space here, and that's pretty open. You can have these are hot desks. You can come in, use the space, use the meeting rooms, and we have a lot of access to different resources within the T-Rex within that co-working space. As people move into office spaces within T-Rex where you need a door and a key to your door and so forth, 24-hour access, that kind of a thing, that's when we start to get a little bit more focused on technology companies that are developing either some sort of hardware or software.
Okay.
We do make a few exceptions to make sure people are supported, but generally that's kind of what we're focused on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So primarily tech companies is
Mostly
kind of the mentality
tech,
there,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
And so if somebody wants to apply, they want to get involved, or they want to make a donation, should they just go to the T-Rex website, or how do they get in touch with you?
So that's a good question. I would encourage them to come on if you're interested in joining T-Rex, or even just to find out more, I would encourage them to come for one of our regular tours, which happen on Wednesday at 3. And our community director, Kathleen Bauer, does those tours. And just to meet Kathleen is a gift.
Of course, we all love
And,
Kathleen.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's one way. And then, yes, we do have a website where people can learn more about T-Rex, can donate. And then we also have attached to our link to our website is our report to the community, which also describes the outcomes and the companies and so forth that T-Rex has created, or T-Rex has helped to support in the company's creation. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, this is awesome. I appreciate you coming on. We're going to transition. We're going to bring Eric onto the
good.
show. And Eric, I always like to say, is the bourbon father in a sense, the creator of Bourbon Friday itself. And Eric always comes on to tell us about our whiskey of the week. So what are we drinking this week?
So there's actually 2 bottles out here. There's a reason why there's 2 bottles out here. So the first bottle, which is what's in the glass.
This one?
So we're trying here, okay?
Is Urban Stillhouse Select. And they're both from Jim Beam, and the other bottle is Distiller's Cup. Both these have a very similar process in making them. They're both non-chill filtered, which means that they don't filter them out, filter them down after they've been distilled. But the reason why I brought this out is this is a product that is actually distilled in downtown Louisville. They opened up a distillery in downtown Louisville, and they actually bring the low wine up to Louisville, distill it there, and take it back to grade. So this is a very special place in downtown Louisville. People often ask me, what is my favorite bourbon? This is it.
That is it.
That is it. That's the one I always talk about. It's only available in one spot, much like T-Rex. Only available in one spot.
There you go.
It's a very important thing. That's important. T-Rex is one of the most important things.
Oh, Eric. And Eric is one of the most important people here at T-Rex to us, too. So,
so yeah. Anyway, so and to me, this is while it does cost more because there's more transportation involved. It is a far superior product to this. This is a great product, but this is the best.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You got your absolute favorite here today.
Cheers.
Cheers.
A
Cheers.
sharing culture, and there was just a little bit of this left, so I thought we would share.
Oh, bless your heart. You're so
That's
sweet.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Eric. And that also ties into kind of the last thing I thought we could discuss for just a couple more minutes here. And that is, I think I work a lot with people that live out in the county or in St. Charles County, and I think that there's kind of a lack of awareness of what's going on in St. Louis in a lot of ways. I mean, we obviously have a very specific reputation as a city that I think is a little bit unfair, but this whole entrepreneurship thing, this whole like kind of the core of downtown finally revitalizing, and the startup scene being such a big part of that. So how do you, if you were trying to evangelize a little bit and talk about the St. Louis startup scene and what is happening here, what would you tell people that maybe don't know what's going on?
So is that a question for me or Eric?
Both of them, everybody, yeah. I've got my opinion, but I want to hear from you first, yeah.
Well, I'll take a stab. I think we're at a really critical moment, and it's a great moment. It's someone told me today that they felt like it's a golden time, really, that we can leverage for the future of downtown and the future of our region, really. I mean, you can't be a suburb of nowhere, right? Yeah. And it's so important that downtown be successful and be vibrant, and people come to think of where all of many of our cultural centers are. Many of them are here in downtown. So this is really important. I think we need to leverage the millennial movement to urban centers.
Sure.
This interest that your wonderful generation has for doing good work and supporting things that are authentic and caring about their cities, and support these kinds of movements to help young people starting businesses, help downtown, and grow. And we have an opportunity, so we need to keep that wheel turning.
Yeah, I mean, in my own self-interest, I live downtown. So the more that downtown builds, the more things I have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one stat that I remember seeing recently was that for every major building in downtown, like there's at least, it's either under remodeling, some process, some sort of construction, or there's a plan to do so with it.
Right.
Which I think is kind of the first time that's happened in decades, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you had to go out 5 or 10 years, I mean, do you think we're going to see the downtown area kind of start? I mean, the question I always have is like, when are they going to build another skyscraper? To me, that's kind of like this threshold of like one. And I know they're building one in Ballpark Village now, right? There's a 20-something story building going in there. Do you see St. Louis continuing to head in that direction, or what do you see there?
That's a good question. I don't know what the style of the building will be.
Yeah.
I love these old buildings.
I do too. Yeah.
I would like to see creative reuse of old buildings, and that incentives stay in place and be put in place so that developers are attracted to properties like this that are unique and could never be. I mean, you can't replace these kinds of buildings. These
Sure.
are just amazing. Nor would we want to. It's our history. So yes, I think this is going to continue. I think though that we can't turn our back on it, and we need people to believe in it and tell good stories about it. We have challenges, but there are a lot of people working to address those challenges, and we can be successful in this. I truly believe that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I believe that too. I think I agree with you. I think we are at a point where we're just sort of like right there teetering on the edge to where we just go up from there.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the last thing we could give some people some information on to kind of wrap it up here is if you are, somebody that's out in the county and maybe you're not really involved in this stuff, like I think a lot of times people ask like, well, how do I get involved? Like, what's a good way to get a sample of it? And I think that, what we're doing here with Bourbon Friday is a great example of that. Venture Cafe is a great example. Do either of you have any other places or maybe those are the best places for somebody to get involved in the startup scene for the first time?
I think those are both really good. Venture Cafe is great.
Sure.
I would say scheduling a meeting here in our conference center is also really helpful. When you're here, I think you have to be in these places to start to get an understanding of it. Not just read about it, not just know tangentially something's happening. Yeah. I heard it's cool. You really need to come see it and feel it, and then you can get really excited about the possibilities. So, and come for a visit. Yeah,
absolutely, cool.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Is anybody that walks in here is like, oh my, I didn't even know what.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and then when they meet the people here, and I'll say for myself. Like, I've lived in St. Louis for 20 years. I've said this before. It's like, not until I came to T-Rex did I feel like I was really home. I found home here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a really special place. Really special place.
It is. It is.
Yeah. We're very lucky, I feel like. We're very lucky.
Well, thank you for everything you do. We would not be here if it wasn't for you, of course.
You guys, of course. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Patty, for joining us today. We appreciate it. If you are watching, we appreciate you tuning in every week to the Bourbon Friday show. And there is an event attached to the show called Bourbon Friday, 4 to 7 every week at T-Rex. You do need to get an invite to attend, so please reach out through the EQ page or through the T-Rex page to ask for an invitation. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we will see you again next week.
Cheers.